India and Sri Lanka have always been connected by more than just the ocean between them. They've had this bond for millennia. It is in this spirit of shared cultural heritage that we have a distinguished statesman of the law, the 43rd Chief Justice and Attorney General of Sri Lanka, Mr. Peter Mohan Perry.
His career spans the commanding heights of the legal system and the global stage, including his service as the permanent representative of Sri Lanka to the United Nations. From the courtroom to the Vice President of the 78th UN General Assembly, we are honored to have him as our guest today. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you very much. Thanks for the very gracious invitation. I'm honored.
Sir, so my first question to you is, when we compare the jurisprudence of India and Sri Lanka, in India, we have the landmark judgment of Keshwananda Bharati that laid down the basic structure doctrine. I'm curious to know, are there any such legal developments in Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka does not recognize an equivalent doctrine. Under Article 82 and 83, a constitutional amendment in Sri Lanka is valid if it follows the prescribed parliamentary majority and referendum requirements. However, having said that, Sri Lanka has developed its own landmark doctrines and judicial principles that play a similarly transformative role in shaping constitutional identity, limiting arbitrary state power, and defining constitutional governance. So, while Sri Lanka has no basic structure doctrine as such, it has developed distinctive landmark principles: public trust, proportionality, environmental constitutionalism, judicial independence, limits on international jurisdiction, and a rigorous fundamental rights review. Now that forms the backbone of its constitutional jurisprudence. So unlike India's Article 368, which was silent until Keshwananda Bharati, Sri Lanka's constitution expressly prescribes what requires a special majority, what requires a referendum, and thirdly, it gives the court only a pre-enactment review role, not a post-enactment power of annulment. So we've got to appreciate that, this you will appreciate, therefore, removes, I say, the space for a judge-made limitation to the basic structure doctrine. The constitutional architecture, therefore, is different. As I was saying, the constitutional architecture is different, right? Sri Lanka has, in this doctrine, the case of the substantive limitation on parliament amending power, right? So to that extent, while recognizing the principle and has been a very salutary doctrine that the Supreme Court in Keshwananda Bharati enunciated, we follow the doctrine in a different way.
So that's indeed a strong constitutional background. Sir, you've held highest positions of authority in respective capacities as the Chief Justice, then as the Attorney General of Sri Lanka. Sir, both of them being extremely crucial constitutional and legal positions. So can you elaborate on the similarities and differences in both positions?
Now, there have been many moments that affirmed my calling, so to speak, if I was to call it that. But if I were to single out one, it would be a moment of quiet clarity rather than public triumph. It was the day I realized that a single decision taken with integrity has the power to protect a life, restore a right, or steady the course of a nation. In that moment, I felt, and I have always felt, the weight and the privilege of the law. I understood the law as that it is not merely a profession. It is a trust. And I remember thinking to myself, perhaps this is why I chose the law, right? So as Attorney General, as Attorney General, I was the state's principal legal advisor and its foremost advocate. The Attorney General's duty, as you will appreciate, is to defend the constitutionality of government action, protect the public interest, and ensure that the machinery of justice functions and functions fairly. It is an active interventionist role, if I was to describe it that way, one that requires strategic judgment, one that requires close engagement with government and responsibility for decisions that sometimes carry immense, substantial political and national consequences. Let's look at the other side of the coin as Chief Justice. As Chief Justice, however, the role shifts entirely. Here, you step away from advocacy and become the guardian of constitutional principles. Isn't that so? The Chief Justice leads an institution, in my view, that must remain above political tides. Your voice must be calm, impartial, and principled, for the authority of the court flows from moral legitimacy, not executive power. Right? So, again, there is another moment perhaps that stands out across my 5 decades really in the law now. It was not in the glare of the Supreme Court nor in the corridors of the United Nations. I would say that it was a moment in court early in my career when a young man's fundamental rights case came before us. He had no influence, no wealth, no voice, only the hope that the law would hear him. So when the court ruled in his favor, I saw what justice can mean to someone who had nothing else to turn to or rely on. That moment stayed with me throughout my journey as Attorney General, as Chief Justice, and even at the UN, where the language of rights becomes the vocabulary of nations. That perhaps was the moment I heard the quieter inner voice that said, this perhaps was another reason why I was chosen to do law, to be on the side of justice when it matters most.
Sir, it's really amazing to see how you have fought a plethora of legal battles and you have held the position of the Chief Justice and Attorney General, both being the highest position in their own capacity.
Sir, what skill from the judiciary did you pick up that proved to be immensely valuable as in your tenure in the United Nations?
The skill that served me best was not legal expertise. Not legal expertise for sure, but judicial listening. Right? In the courtroom, you will appreciate, you learn to listen clinically, to hear what is said, what is unsaid, and what lies beneath what is said. All right? You learn to separate noise from substance, posture from principle, and emotion from argument. Because the courthouse is one big drama. Right? What I discovered at the UN is that this form of disciplined listening is a diplomatic superpower. To learn to accommodate the other, to see him in you, which is the core to good foreign policy. Right? So, there you are. Crafting language that creates consensus is something that I had to develop. Of course, judgments in court require precision. Language that is clear, language that is neutral and acceptable to all parties. At the United Nations, surprisingly, the same skill operates. Wording resolutions, negotiating communiques, finding the phrasing that keeps multiple delegations in agreement, 193 member states, right? And 15 members in the Security Council. So a judge's relationship with language is a diplomat's greatest tool, in my view, right? The next thing is the capacity to command respect without wielding power. Now that's a tough call, isn't it? You know, someone told me, did you realize that it is very difficult to be nobody? Try it. You'll soon find that you can't live without it. You have to be something, right? A judge's authority, you will appreciate, is moral and intellectual, not political. In diplomacy, where you often cannot compel, you can only persuade, moral authority matters more than hard power. I must be able to look at my colleague's face and say, Excellency, I'm completely with you, but I'm sorry, I cannot vote with you, right? So people pay attention to when you speak with what I found there. When you speak with fairness, when you speak with balance and intellectual honesty, it answers a myriad questions. You are accepted into the community with open arms. The courtroom teaches you that respect is earned not by position but by conduct, isn't it? Judges, either they like you or the bar will like you simply for your being honorable. And that's the only legacy you take away the day you hang up your gown. So the unexpected gift my judicial career gave me was this: the ability to listen in a way that makes others feel heard. You may not be listening to him, but you make him feel heard, right? Okay? So that's an amazingly fine skill that you have to develop. That single skill, mind you, more than legal knowledge, more than constitutional theory, proved to be the quiet engine, the silent engine of diplomacy. It opens doors, lowers tensions, and builds bridges across political divides. In the United Nations, that is often the difference, I say, that I have easily found it, between stalemate and progress.
So that is quite a contrast that you have drawn, along with so much similarities and so much skills that you have picked up from you as the Chief Justice that are applicable today as a diplomat in the United Nations. And I agree, drafting, integrity, and working with fairness are very crucial at every stage of your life, when you start as a law student till you become the diplomat at the United Nations. And so, since we are speaking of the United Nations, you have been the 78th vice, you have been the vice president of the 78th UN General Assembly. But for a layman, we don't understand what exactly does your work entail. Can you please enlighten us upon that? And also, can you please share with us any behind the scenes that goes on at the UN General Assembly?
Now, a vice president frequently chairs meetings of the General Assembly when the president is unavailable. There are several vice presidents, right? I was just one of them, right? Of course, there's a very small group of vice presidents, but I was one of them. Now, what does it entail? What does that position entail? This requires strict neutrality. Strict neutrality. A lot of respect for everyone, equal respect. A thorough knowledge of UN procedure. Of course, one always has an officer of the Secretariat of the United Nations who has mastery of the rules of procedure sitting in with me at the sessions, right next to me, so that I can probably refer to him or her if I had any doubts about what I need to do, right? Next thing is managing debates with fairness. Sometimes some speakers will hold forth, go on and on and on ad nauseum. Some of them would probably, the rhetoric won't be very palatable, but you've got to allow a lot of perhaps leverage and nonsense. A little bit of nonsense has to be kind of accommodated. You have to control the flow diplomatically, in other words, right? The correct, I once remember the Iranian delegation, the permanent representative, reminded an officer that it was the Islamic Republic of Iran, when it was just referred to simply as being Iran. He said, no, we are not Iran. We are the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's quite right. You've got to be given that respect. And ensuring that even contentious sessions run smoothly. Mind you, there is a lot of filibustering sometimes goes on. There are mischievous PRs who will pop you a question, the most unexpected of questions, and I've been confronted with one or two of them quite often, and I've been able to kind of respond to them pretty effectively. So, in other words, the gavel must be firm but not heavy-handed. Not heavy-handed. You have to have loads of patience, because every word that is spoken at the United Nations is not a gem of wisdom. I can tell you that, right? Okay. So the gavel must be firm but not heavy-handed. The vice presidency of the UNGA is the art of maintaining global order in a room full of competing narratives. Competing narratives. They tell each other off quite brazenly. And that's one place you can agree to disagree, diplomatically, democratically, while ensuring that every nation, large or small, whether it is Vanuatu or Kiribati or the United States or India for that matter, large or small, feels heard, respected, and included. Because however small or big you are, you have one vote. That matters, right? So it is diplomacy at its most delicate, but also at its most meaningful. Okay?
Sir, I do agree that UN has played a very crucial role in the global economy and everything. And not only it has provided the diplomatic space, but it has also promoted ties. It has also preserved relations, diplomatic relations. Sir, and diplomacy is, in my opinion, not just about negotiation and treaties. It is about the culture, it is about the heritage of a country as well. With that, I would like to ask, where do you see the friendship between India and Sri Lanka?
I thought you'll ask me that question, and I thought about it last night in the wee hours of the morning. I would like to respond to it in this way. You will agree with me that diplomacy is not merely the art of negotiating treaties. That's not the be all and end all of diplomacy. It is the weaving together of culture, of heritage, and shared memory. We go a long way there, don't we? Sri Lanka has always viewed the India-Sri Lanka relationship as civilizational before it is political. Long before modern diplomacy, our two peoples exchanged religion, philosophy, language, art, and commerce, isn't it? The Buddha's message, the Ramayana's geography, the shared rhythm, I say, of our music and cuisine, such lovely cuisine, even in our maritime history in the Indian Ocean, all testify to one thing, to a bond that predates, I say, statehood. So, if I was to say in contemporary times, this heritage has matured into a deeply interdependent partnership. A deeply interdependent partnership. India has been a first responder in times of crisis for us in Sri Lanka, whether during natural disasters, the COVID-19 pandemic, or moments of economic stress. Sri Lanka, for its part, has been undoubtedly a reliable friend in the Indian Ocean, committed to stability, maritime security, and democratic values. But having said all that, what gives this relationship its special character is not simply strategic alignment. It's not simply strategic alignment. It is the emotional and cultural proximity of our two nations, whose people instinctively understand one another. Diplomacy becomes then easier, you will agree with me, when the hearts of the peoples are already aligned. That is the success story to this relationship. So today, as both our countries navigate rapidly changing geopolitical landscape, I see the friendship as a model of regional cooperation, a model grounded in trust, where each country's prosperity and security reinforces the others. I would go to say that it is a relationship that can elevate the entire Indian Ocean region economically, culturally, and strategically. Right? So, for Sri Lanka, the India Sri Lanka friendship is not just a bilateral engagement, it is something much, much more. It is a shared story, continually written by history, geography, and the aspirations of two closely linked nations. That's how I see it.
Sir, essentially what I pick up from your address is that compassion and shared cultural heritage can go much beyond bilateral treaties or bilateral engagement. Sir, this can also draw lessons for students across Global South. So from your own experience, from your international experience, what advice would you give to the students, to the law students of Global South today?
My advice will be fourfold. Firstly, master the foundations but never stop questioning. Remember, the law, they say, is a jealous mistress. You have to give it all your time. Don't get into it if you can't give it that time. Right? Master the foundations. The Global South has shown, remember, its own constitutional journeys, its own model of justice, its own lived realities. My advice is that you should not adopt a legal doctrine merely because they are fashionable elsewhere. Remember that. I don't think you need to let your imagination run riot to what I'm saying. Understand them, critique them, and adapt them to the needs of your society. That's what we need to do. Intellectual independence is the first step towards institutional independence. Secondly, cultivate courage. The law is not for timorous souls. who think that every path is beset by lions, right? Not only moral courage, but intellectual courage. It's easier said than done. There will be moments in your career when the easy answer and the right answer will not be the same. There will be moments in your career when the easy answer and the right answer will not be the same. Your duty then is not to take the convenient path out of it, but answer to conscience and to the Constitution. Every reform in our part of the world, you will see, has been led by individuals who refuse to compromise with the convenient. A classic example is Gandhiji, isn't it? Right? So you have an icon of goodness, of what is right. There's a price you have to pay for doing the right thing, standing up for the right thing. And that's exactly what we are required to do. Thirdly, remember that law without empathy is like architecture without a foundation. Law without empathy is, I say, architecture without foundation. We in the global south work with communities that have faced conflict, poverty, displacement, and systemic disadvantage. We see it all around us, isn't it? Whether you become judges, whether you become a legislator or counsel, let compassion inform your interpretation of justice. You can't have it somewhere else in some other compartment. The law is strongest, remember, when it protects the weakest. Fourthly, we need to learn to think globally but serve locally. Think globally and serve locally. The world is, remember, today deeply interconnected. I was saying during the lecture on maritime law, I said the seas have no boundaries. It's the seas that connect us all, right? Over 5 decades of my career, one truth has never perhaps changed. Economically, digitally, and environmentally, we are interconnected. But justice is delivered in courtrooms, right? And communities, right? Learn the language of global governance. You can't be the frog in the well. You have to learn the language, the lingo of global governance. Human rights. There are no special human rights for Sri Lanka or ones for India. There's only one human right as members of the human family. Climate law, right? International trade, and so on and so forth. Yet, I say never lose sight of the everyday citizen who depends on the fairness of your system. Look at the comfort zones we live in. Think of the poor fellow who walks on the road in that sun outside, putting brick over brick right round the dream city. Right? So never lose sight of the everyday citizen who depends on the fairness of your system. He's just as human as you and I are. So ultimately, I would tell each law student, choose the law every day. Work with it, sleep with it, dream of it, right? Not for what it gives you, but for what it allows you to give. Not for what it gives you, but for what it allows you to give. And I tell you, you will have enough resources to give generously. So if you do that, I have no doubt that you will not merely have a career, you will have a calling. Thank you.
So that was such a comprehensive answer indeed. from employing global governance to upholding national beliefs, individualistic and courage. Sir, if law students today start picking up the principles that you laid down, I'm sure Global South has a long way to go. Sir, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you here.
The pleasure being with you. I hope we'll make great lawyers and we turn India into a great country along with Sri Lanka, and that we can make jointly together the world a better place to live in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.